Hello, and welcome to this JCT screencast on working with learning outcomes in the Junior Cycle Business Studies specification. It will be very useful to have the Business Studies specification to refer to throughout this screencast. You can find it on www.curriculumonline.ie. Page reference numbers have been provided on screen at certain points throughout this screencast, where you may wish to pause and engage with the specification. Learning outcomes are statements in curriculum specifications that describe the knowledge and understanding, skills and values students should be able to demonstrate after a period of learning. The learning outcomes for business studies have been informed by 6 of the 24 statements of learning that have been directly linked to business studies. It is important to note that the 8 key skills of the framework for junior cycle are fully embedded in the learning outcomes of business studies. The specification for junior cycle business studies is set at common level and comprises of 37 learning outcomes that have been arranged across 3 strands. There are 13 learning outcomes in personal finance, 13 in enterprise, and 11 in our economy. The learning outcomes set out in the business studies specification apply to all students and represent outcomes for students at the end of their 3 years of study. The learning outcomes focused on at a particular point in time will not have been completed, but will continue to support the students' learning of business studies up to the end of junior cycle. The outcomes are numbered within each strand. The numbering is intended to support teacher planning in the first instance and does not imply any hierarchy of importance across the outcomes themselves. While the learning outcomes associated with each strand are set out separately in the specification, they should not be taken to imply that the strands are to be studied in isolation. The students' engagement in learning are optimised by a fully integrated experience of personal finance, enterprise and our economy. That is to say, the combining of learning outcomes from across the 3 strands over the 3 years to provide rich learning experiences that are authentic and relevant to the student. The NCCA has provided 2 glossaries to assist in working with business studies learning outcomes. They are to be found in the appendix of the specification. The first is a glossary of business terms. It is designed to clarify the terminology used in junior cycle business studies to enable teachers and students to understand how the terms are interpreted and applied. The second is a glossary of action verbs. It is designed to clarify the learning outcomes. Each action verb is described in terms of what the learner should be able to do once they have achieved the learning outcome. Before we proceed further, it is worth taking a moment to consider what is meant by knowledge and understanding, skills and values, as these are the very definition of what a learning outcome is and the headings by which we will unpack them. It can be said that knowledge refers to what one knows, the body of facts and range of information, while understanding means to comprehend something, receive the intended meaning and apply the knowledge gained. Skills are the ability to do something well. You can train to do something. Finally, it can be said that values are an appreciation of the importance, worth or usefulness of something. We will now take you through the process of unpacking learning outcomes. It is important to note that these are simply examples of unpacking and that the new specification embraces teacher autonomy and supports you in working within your local context as appropriate. All outcomes in the specification start with the phrase, students should be able to, as this puts the focus on what the student should know, understand and be able to do after a period of learning. The first learning outcome is from Strand 1, Personal Finance. You will find it on page 14 of the specification. Please take a moment to read this learning outcome. We must first scrutinise the learning outcome for any and all business terms and action verbs that may be included and consult the glossaries. Please note that there is no terminology from the glossary of business terms contained in this outcome. The action verbs include identify, classify, compare, and evaluate. Definitions for each of these can be found on pages 25 to 27 of the specification. The following video shows how one business studies department unpacked learning outcome 1.2. Learning outcome 1.2. Students should be able to identify and classify sources of income and expenditure. Compare options available to best manage financial resources. Evaluating the risks associated with each option. and making informed and responsible judgments. We use a sectioned template to help us unpack the learning outcome under the following headings: knowledge and understanding, skills, and values. We start with knowledge and understanding. Regular and irregular sources of income. Fixed, irregular, and discretionary expenditure. Deposit and current accounts and the features of each. Debit and credit cards, the benefits and risks of each. Where to save and invest. Financial institutions, reasons for and against different options. Develop understanding of risk and your money. Assessing and minimizing risk. Responsible spending and use of financial resources. Monitoring bank statement. Now let us look at skills. Planning for your money. Managing your money. Assessing risk. Informed and balanced decision making. Evaluating skills. Identify and classify. Ability to compare options and alternatives. Numeracy skills, calculating income and expenditure. Finally, we can consider the values. An awareness of risk and the importance of assessing and minimizing risk in personal finances. Making responsible judgments around personal financial resources. The significance of planning and monitoring your money. The second learning outcome is 3.2 from Strand 3, Our Economy. You will find it on page 16 of the specification. Please take a moment to read learning outcome 3.2. We must first scrutinise the learning outcome for any and all business terms and action verbs that may be included and consult the glossaries. The business terms used in this learning outcome are organisation and economic resources, and they can be found on page 23 of the specification. The action verb used is explain, and it can be found on page 26 of the specification. The following video shows how one Business Studies department unpacked learning outcome 3.2. Learning outcome 3.2. Students should be able to explain how individuals, organisations, for-profit and not-for-profit, and the government work together to distribute economic resources used to produce goods and services. Once again, we use the sectioned template to help us unpack the learning outcome under the headings of knowledge and understanding, skills, and values. We start with knowledge and understanding. Economic resources, production of goods and services. Individual, labour, spending, taxes and charges, savings. Organisations, income, production, imports, exports, taxes and charges, profits, investing. Government, sources of income, provision of services and supports to individuals and organisations. Simple circular flow of income diagram. Understanding the interdependent relationship between individuals, organisations and the government. Organisations are profit and non-profit, including financial institutions. A basic understanding of the multiplier effect of buying Irish. We now look at skills. Making connections, discussing and analysing relationships. constructing a simple circular flow of income diagram, including injections and withdrawals. Finally, we considered the values. Recognising effective factors such as saving, investing, taxes, government spending on the circular flow of income. Appreciate how money is circulated through the system. Recognise the impact of individuals, organisations and governments. Appreciate the interdependent relationships. Becoming aware of the significance of the multiplier effect in the economy. It is recommended that as a business department, you should agree on the learning outcomes to be addressed in the term ahead, and then collaboratively begin to unpack those learning outcomes in the manner outlined in the videos. Having engaged in this process, you are now in a position to group learning outcomes together where possible to form units of learning and plan teaching, assessment and learning. Sample units of learning can be found on our website, www.jct.ie. The key messages from this screencast are that learning outcomes describe the knowledge, understanding, skills and values that students should be able to demonstrate after 3 years of learning. That learning outcomes focused on at a point in time will not have been completed, but will continue to support the students' learning of business studies up to the end of junior cycle. The glossaries in the specification provide support and guidance when unpacking learning outcomes. Thank you for watching this JCT screencast on working with learning outcomes in the Junior Cycle Business Studies specification.